Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because, wow, we are looking at an absolutely fascinating and highly complex situation. It's known as the Amrelyon Case. Today's Explainer is going to be an objective, entirely administrative review of one man's decade-long pursuit of justice. We're going to look really closely at the case of Mohammed Abdullah Hussein Alatas. He's a Saudi citizen who has spent literally more than 10 years navigating the legal, administrative, and medical systems of his country, all in this massive search for transparency and accountability. We'll be examining the primary source documents, looking at the exact claims being made, and exploring what actually happens when administrative processes just break down. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our agenda today covers 5 parts: an introduction to the Amrelyon case, a decade of documentation, patterns of institutional silence, proposed structural legal remedies, and finally, a call for public transparency.
Part 1. Introduction to the Amrelyon case.
To truly understand this situation, we need to view it as way more than just a personal grievance, right? It is constitutional and religious in scope. We literally have to look at the legal foundation of Saudi Arabia itself, where the constitution is the Quran and the Sunnah. And the Saudi constitution, based on the Quran, is incredibly straightforward. It simply says, "Do not spy." The source material points out that unauthorized surveillance is presented here not just as a privacy violation, but as a direct, fundamental breach of Islamic law, the Saudi constitution, and human dignity itself. Mohammed asserts that he's been subjected to continuous unauthorized surveillance, and that individuals around him have consistently referenced private matters they should have absolutely no way of knowing. By grounding his complaint in this constitutional text, he is really elevating the whole case. It goes from a personal dispute to a massive demand for fundamental constitutional rights and due process.
Part 2. A decade of documentation. Now, what's really interesting about this is that when someone claims their rights have been violated, the very first question is almost always, okay, where's the paperwork? Well, the procedural reality here begins back in 2014, when Mohammed reports first experiencing unusual behavior, indirect communication, and severe social and economic isolation. Over the next decade, we see a totally methodical escalation. He didn't just jump straight to the top. No, he actually followed the administrative ladder rung by rung. In 2016, he filed local complaints to the Emirate of Makkah. By 2020, he escalated his appeals for a hearing through the Ministry of Justice and the Naji's judicial portal. And by 2024, after completely exhausting domestic avenues, he sent submissions all the way to the International Criminal Court. This timeline brilliantly demonstrates a citizen meticulously trying to engage with the system at literally every possible level, from local police to international bodies.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer volume of procedural evidence gathered over 10 years. We are talking about a massive paper trail here. Over the years, Mohammed submitted formal submission confirmations from the Emirate, official Naji's case records, Ministry of Justice filings, police reports, and even receipts of his ICC submissions. And that's alongside medical reports and personal timelines. He has submitted all these documents openly, desperately attempting to trigger a formal investigation, or at the very least, just secure a simple interview.
Part 3. Patterns of institutional silence.
When we zoom out and objectively contrast the two sides of this case, a really stark administrative gap appears. On one hand, you have Mohammed requesting standard legal due process, right? Things like public hearings, formal investigations, and witness interviews. Yet the institutional response was basically just a pattern of total silence. Complaints were simply ignored, court cases were canceled, often without any explanation or proper review whatsoever. The system completely failed to provide the basic mechanisms of justice that were being requested.
But honestly, the administrative silence wasn't even the most concerning part of all this. The core assertion of this entire case is that instead of granting legal hearings, authorities directed Mohammed to psychiatric institutions. According to the source documents, he was literally labeled mentally ill without any actual evidence. Psychiatric intervention entirely replaced legal due process. Mohammed asserts that he was subjected to forced injections and forced to take pills without proper evidentiary justification, and to top it off, he was explicitly told not to file further cases. This raises some incredibly profound questions about the misuse of psychiatric authority as a tool to just silence administrative complaints.
Part 4. Proposed structural legal remedies. Let's move to and see how this builds, because Mohammed didn't just document his own administrative nightmare, he actually used it to design systemic solutions. He methodically connected each specific institutional failure to a corresponding global project. For instance, where he experienced a lack of community support and justice, he proposes Akrimna, which is a platform designed for peace and ease. Where he encountered a total lack of transparency and accountability, he proposes Al-Nas, a unified global civic platform.
And to directly combat that severe misuse of psychiatric authority we just talked about, he designed Almodir, a global chain of command system. These platforms are quite literally engineered to fix the exact vulnerabilities that derailed his own life.
So the crucial point is understanding how a system like Almodir actually works in practice. It is a structural, global chain of command system explicitly designed to prevent the exact pattern of abuse we were just looking at. By creating really clear authority lines, transparent decision-making, and rigid accountability mechanisms, Almodir ensures that a citizen cannot simply be swallowed up by institutional silence. But maybe more importantly, it creates structural protections against the forced misuse of psychiatric power. It basically demands verifiable legal evidence before medical labels can ever be used to dismiss a person's legal claims.
Part 5. Call for public transparency.
After 10 whole years of closed doors and canceled cases, Mohammed launched an ongoing public petition, basically demanding open legal transparency. The source material notes something super important here. Mohammed has witnesses who privately acknowledge the situation but are terrified of speaking publicly due to potential retaliation. So, to safely gather evidence from witnesses who fear that retaliation, this petition is hosted on akermena.org using highly structured, completely non-coercive rules. It allows for the voluntary submission of written statements and the secure uploading of document evidence. There is absolutely zero forced testimony here, and the petition makes no direct accusations against specific individuals. It's really a brilliant administrative workaround, specifically designed to safely gather evidence from government employees, institution workers, and everyday citizens who have knowledge of the case but fear institutional blowback.
And what is all this meticulous evidence gathering actually for? Well, it all leads to the ultimate demand. Mohammed asserts that he has never lied, that he has been entirely consistent for 10 years, and that he has submitted all of his documents openly. His consistent 10-year request really boils down to one simple thing: a public hearing. That's it. He is demanding the basic right to present his testimony openly, the right to call his witnesses without them fearing for their safety, the opportunity to finally correct his psychiatric record, and the chance to formally review the administrative negligence that has defined his case.
I want to leave you with a final, pretty serious question to think about. If the systems designed to protect us substitute medical labels for legal justice, how can true due process survive? This case is a profound warning about what happens when administrative silence becomes the default and medical authority is used to bypass constitutional rights. It really challenges all of us to look closely at our own institutions and demand the transparency and accountability that Mohammed Abdullah Hussein Alatas has spent a literal decade fighting for. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive into the source documents has given you a much clearer understanding of the Amrelyon case.